Welcome to Sonara's Deep Dive.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking into something pretty fascinating, a spiritual tradition that feels almost hidden. Imagine an ancient faith running alongside early Christianity, early Judaism.
And somehow it survived. 2 millennia. Through empires, persecutions, constant upheaval, clinging to its identity really through water.
Exactly. We are immersing ourselves today in Mandaeism.
And this deep dive, it's special because, well, Mandaeism is recognized pretty widely as the world's last surviving Gnostic tradition. It's not just influenced by Gnosticism, it is Gnostic.
Wow, so we're talking about an ethno-religious minority primarily from Iraq and Iran, historically.
That's right. Their heartland is or was the marshlands of southern Iraq and Khuzestan in Iran. And the history, well, our sources suggest they might have migrated from the Jordan-Palestine area way back, maybe around the 1st century CE, settling in Mesopotamia.
And their core belief, that Gnostic element, it's about salvation through knowledge, right? Through Manda.
Precisely. Manda means knowledge, gnosis. That's the path. It's not just faith. It's understanding your origins and the way back to the light.
Okay, and here's something that immediately jumps out, kind of an aha moment when you first encounter them.
Oh, yeah. What's that for you?
John the Baptist. They don't just respect him, they revere him as their supreme and final prophet. Yahana, they call him.
Absolutely. He's not a forerunner. He's the main event. He's the one who brought the essential manda to humanity. It fundamentally reframed his whole story.
It really does. And that connects directly to their central practice, doesn't it? This idea of baptism, but not like a one-time thing.
Not at all. We're talking about Mel's Buddha.
Yeah.
It's a repeated ritual, constant purification, often performed every single Sunday, Habshaba.
Yeah.
And it has to be in flowing, living water.
Living water. Mia Hayyi. That seems crucial.
It's everything. It defines their ritual life, their connection to the divine. So our mission today really is to unpack all of this. We'll look at their scripture, their cosmology, this incredible dualism, the priesthood, the rituals in detail, and importantly, the crisis they face right now.
A crisis linked to that very water they depend on.
Huh.
Okay, let's start with the foundation. Their scripture, the Genzaraba.
The Genzaraba, yeah. It means great treasure. It's sometimes called Sidraba, great book. And the name tells you how central it is.
Tradition holds it goes back to Adam, the first revelation.
That's the traditional belief, yes. It's seen as the ultimate source for, well, everything. Theology, cosmology, ethics, how to live, how to perform the rituals. It's incredibly comprehensive.
And the structure itself is interesting, right? It's not just one continuous text.
No, and this is fascinating. It physically embodies their dualistic worldview. It's divided into 2 main parts, the right Ginza and the left Ginza.
Okay, tell me about the right Ginza first.
So the right Ginza, or GR, it's made up of 18 tractates. Think of these as writings for the living. They cover theology, creation stories, ethics, history, mythology. Basically, how to navigate life correctly in this material world, Tibble.
Instructions for the here and now, and the left Ginza.
The left Ginza, or GL, is much shorter, just 3 tractates. But its focus is intense. It's known as the Book of the Dead.
The Book of the Dead. So purely about the soul's journey after death.
Exactly. It details the fate of the soul, the nishimta, and its difficult journey, its ascent out of the material world towards the world of light.
And there's something about how they're bound together.
Yes, this is really symbolic. Traditionally, in the physical codices, the left Ginza is placed upside down and back to front compared to the right Ginza.
Upside down. Why? What's the symbolism there?
It represents the total opposition between the 2 realms they describe. The right Ginza is for Tibble, the material world, facing this way. The left Ginza guides the soul out of Tibble towards the Alma Danura, the world of light, facing that way. Bound together, but fundamentally oriented in opposite directions. It's a map of both sides of existence.
That's quite profound. And how old is this text, really? How do we know it's ancient?
Well, the language is key. It's written in classical Mandaic. That's a distinct Eastern Aramaic dialect, the kind of language spoken in that region, potentially by John the Baptist community, back in the first few centuries CE. That linguistic connection is very strong.
But it wasn't all written down at once. It's a compilation.
Oh, definitely. It's clear it's a collection of texts from different periods. Some elements, scholars date back as far as the 1st to 3rd century CE.
Just some very early components.
Very early. But the final compilation, bringing it all together into the Genzaraba as we mostly know it, that probably happened later, likely during the early Islamic period, maybe around the 7th or 8th century.
How can we be reasonably sure about that timing?
There are clues within the text itself. For instance, the 18th tractate of the Right Ginza, often called the Book of Kings, contains references that many scholars interpret as reflecting the Mandaean community's experience and self-definition during and after the Arab conquest. It suggests they were codifying their identity in response to this major shift in the political and religious landscape.
Right, solidifying who they were in a changing world. That makes sense. And that need for definition leads us straight into their cosmology, this core dualism.
Exactly. Everything stems from this fundamental split, light versus darkness.
But you mentioned earlier, despite this dualism, they're monotheistic. How does that work?
It's a crucial distinction. At the very top, there's one supreme being, Hayyi Rabbi, the Great Life, utterly transcendent, beyond form, dwelling solely in the Alma Dinura, the world of light. Pure goodness, the source of all life.
Okay, so Hayyi Rabbi is perfect light. But our world, Tibble, you said it's seen as impure, flawed. If Hayyi Rabbi didn't create it, who did?
That's the classic Gnostic dilemma, isn't it? How does imperfection arise from perfection? Mandaeism's answer involves lesser beings. The world of light isn't empty. It's populated by emanations from Hayyi Rabbi, these celestial beings called uthri. Think of them as guardians or excellencies.
Like angels.
Sort of, but specific to their cosmology. Now, the material world, Tibble, was not created by Hayyi Rabbi. Its creation is attributed to a lesser divine figure, Tahil.
Tahil,
Yeah.
the demiurge, the flawed creator.
Precisely. He is sometimes called the fourth life. Tahil attempted to create the physical universe, but, well, he botched the job.
Why? What went wrong?
Because he was influenced, maybe even partly formed, by the forces of darkness that exist below the world of light. So his creation, our material world, is inherently mixed, impure. It became a kind of prison for souls.
A prison for souls. And these uthri you mentioned are any particularly important for humanity?
Yes, absolutely central is Manda Di Hayyi. That name literally means gnosis of life or knowledge of life.
The personification of that salvific knowledge we talked about?
Exactly. Manda Di Hayyi is the key messenger, the divine emissary sent from the world of light down into Tibble. He's often identified with the divine wisdom embodied in John the Baptist. His purpose is to awaken the trapped souls, remind them of where they came from, and show them the way back.
So salvation comes through receiving and understanding this Manda, this knowledge he brings.
That's the core of it. It's about enlightenment, remembering your true nature.
Okay, let's flip to the other side then, the darkness. You mentioned forces of darkness. Is there a central figure there?
Oh, yes. A very powerful and active one. Her name is Ruha.
Ruha, which means spirit, confusingly.
Yes. It's a bit confusing, but in this context, she's the queen of the world of darkness. She has other names, too, like Namrus or Hiwat. She is the embodiment of everything the Mandaean path seeks to overcome. Lust, impurity, lies, corruption.
And what's her role in this cosmic drama?
Her main goal, often working alongside the king of darkness, is to keep souls trapped here in Tibble. She actively works to bind the soul, the Njinta, to the material body, the Pagra.
How does she do that?
Well, the texts say she actually assisted Tahil in the flawed creation of the physical body, ensuring it would be a good container, a trap. But it goes deeper. Ruha is also identified as the mother of the 7 planets.
The planets, like Jupiter, Mars, Venus.
Yes. But in Mandaean thought, the planets aren't just celestial bodies. They are seen as demonic entities, forces of fate and destiny. They exert a negative influence, binding the soul to the cycles of the material world, to suffering and ignorance.
So astrology is bad news in Mandaeism.
Very much so. Looking up at the stars isn't about finding guidance. It's about seeing the agents of Ruha, the powers that hold you captive. Escaping their influence is part of achieving liberation.
That's a really distinct cosmology. How does it compare to other dualistic systems we might know, like Zoroastrianism or Manichaeism? People sometimes lump them together.
It's important to see the differences. Zoroastrianism is primarily an ethical dualism, Ahura Mazda versus Ahriman. It's about the choice between good and evil within a world that was created good.
And Manichaeism, that was pretty radical, wasn't it?
It's extremely radical. Manichaeism presents an ontological dualism. Light and darkness are two eternal, uncreated, fundamentally opposed substances. Matter itself is darkness, inherently evil. Any contact contaminates.
So Mandaeism isn't quite either of those.
No, it's often described as a vertical or cosmological dualism. The material world, Tibble, isn't inherently evil substance like in Manichaeism, but it's a flawed, impure creation made by a lesser being, Tahil, under the influence of darkness, Ruha. It's a prison, yes, but the way out isn't necessarily extreme asceticism, but rather escape.
Escape through Manda and ritual purity.
Exactly. Knowledge and rigorous, constant ritual purification are the keys to loosening the bonds of fate, overcoming the influence of Ruha on the planets, and enabling the soul to ascend back to the world of light.
Which brings us squarely to the rituals, that constant need for purification you mentioned. And it all hinges on Mia Hayyi, the living water.
Absolutely non-negotiable. Mia Hayyi is paramount. Our sources stress it's seen as the only direct manifestation of Hayyi Rabbi, the great life here on earth. It's the divine life force itself flowing from the world of light into our world.
So the location for rituals is dictated entirely by access to this water.
Entirely. Rituals must happen in or right next to a source of natural, flowing, fresh water. Think rivers, streams, and symbolically all these earthly rivers used for ritual are called yardna.
Yardna, like the Jordan River.
Precisely. It connects their earthly practice directly to a mythical, celestial Jordan River in the world of light. It signifies that the purity comes from above.
And it has to be flowing water. Stagnant water won't do.
No, definitely not. The flowing nature reflects the dynamic, life-giving quality of the divine. Stagnant water, or water that's been polluted or artificially contained in certain ways, is ritually dead, useless. It can even be defiling.
That has huge implications, especially today, which we'll get to. But let's talk about the main ritual for the living. Mezbuda, the baptism. Why repeat it so often, even weekly?
Because life in Tibble constantly exposes the soul to impurity. Contact with unclean things, negative thoughts, just the general spiritual pollution of the material world under Ruha's influence. It all dims the soul's light. Mezbuda acts like a regular spiritual cleansing, a reset.
Like scrubbing off the accumulated grime of the world.
That's a good way to put it. It reinforces the soul's connection, its lafa, with the world of light and keeps it ready for the eventual journey home. It's ongoing maintenance for salvation.
And the ritual itself, it's not simple. It involves 7 distinct steps performed by a priest in white robes, Rasta. Can you walk us through that?
It's very precise. The person enters the yardna, the flowing water. The priest begins with water splashing 3 times while saying the person's malwasha, their baptismal or soul name. It's like calling the soul forth.
Calling it out of the material focus.
Yes. Then comes the first kushta. This is a special right-hand clasp between the priest and the participant. It signifies a covenant, a pledge of truth and faithfulness to the light.
A handshake of commitment, then the immersion.
Then the core cleansing, the triple immersion. The priest gently guides the person's head under the water 3 times. Each dip symbolizes dying to the material world and being reborn into the life of the spirit.
A mini death and resurrection each time.
In a symbolic sense, yes. A renewal. After they come up the 3rd time, the priest performs the triple signing of the forehead, using his right fingers to make 3 marks. It's like sealing the person, marking them as belonging to the world of light.
And then they drink the water.
Step 5. The triple drinking. The participant drinks the Mia Hayyi directly from the priest's cupped hand 3 times. This internalizes the purity, cleansing from within.
And the final steps.
The priest places a klila, a small ringlet woven from myrtle twigs, onto the participant's white turban, the berzinka. The myrtle signifies life and purity, like a victor's crown.
A crown of light.
Exactly. And the whole thing concludes with a final blessing from the priest and one last kushta hand clasp as the person leaves the water renewed and reconnected. Every step is vital.
It's incredibly thorough. And this need for purity isn't just limited to this big Sunday ritual, is it? There are other ablutions.
Right. The sources mention 2 others quite clearly. There's tamasha. This is also a triple immersion, like Mezbuda, but it can be done without a priest. It's required after major sources of ritual impurity.
Like what kind of impurity?
Things like touching a dead body, recovering from serious illness, or impurities associated with bodily functions like menstruation or sexual activity. It's a more intensive self-purification.
Okay. And for daily life?
That's Rishima. This is a simpler daily ablution, washing the face, hands, feet before prayers or after things like using the toilet. It's about maintaining a baseline level of purity throughout the day. So you have Mezbuda, Tamasha, and Rishama forming this constant cycle of cleansing.
All aimed at keeping the soul ready for, well, the end of life and the journey beyond. Which brings us to the Masikta.
The Masikta, yes.
Yeah.
The ritual of the dead, or, more accurately, the ritual for the dead. If Mezbuda keeps you clean while alive, Masikta is the crucial launching procedure for the soul after death.
Launching procedure. I like that. What does it involve? It sounds complex.
It is perhaps their most complex rite. Masika means ascent or raising up. It's a series of prayers, recitations, and symbolic meals and offerings performed by priests over several days after someone dies. It's not for the body. It's entirely focused on helping the soul the Nishimta, navigate the perilous journey ahead.
Perilous. What dangers does the soul face?
According to Mandaean belief, after death, the soul must travel upwards towards the world of light. But it has to pass through a series of checkpoints, essentially. These are called the Moranta, or toll houses.
Toll houses, like cosmic border control.
Pretty much. Each Morata is guarded by various entities, some celestial, some demonic. They challenge the soul, examining its purity, its knowledge, testing whether it lived according to the Mandaean way.
And if it fails the test?
If the soul is too weighed down by impurity or lacks the necessary knowledge, it can be turned back, possibly needing to reincarnate or remain trapped in the lower realms. The Masikta rituals are designed to equip the soul, providing it with the pathwords, the protection, the strength to pass through these matorta.
Who makes the final judgment? Is there a final checkpoint?
Yes, the ultimate gatekeeper is a figure called Abatur, sometimes known as the third life. He presides over the scales, weighing the soul's deeds and purity at the very boundary of the world of light.
The weigher of souls.
Exactly. If the soul passes Abatur's judgment, which is facilitated by a life lived purely and the proper performance of the Masiko, then it achieves the goal.
Which is?
Reunion. The soul, Nishimta, merges with its spiritual counterpart, its perfect heavenly image or double, the Damuta. And together, they enter the pure realm of Munyakusia, the ultimate world of light. That's the destination. All the rituals point towards making that final ascent successful.
It makes sense why the priesthood would be so crucial then. Performing these complex, essential rituals like Masbuddha and especially Masita requires incredible knowledge and purity. What's the structure?
It's a very traditional hierarchical structure. At the top, you potentially have a Rishama, a sort of patriarch, though this position isn't always filled. The main functioning head is usually the Genzibra, which means treasurer, but really signifies the high priest, the most learned leader of a community.
Okay, the Genzibra. And below them?
Below the Genzibra is the rank most priests hold. The Tarmida, meaning disciple or junior priest. These are the ones performing most baptisms and assisting in other rituals. And even before ordination, there's the role of the Shiganda, sort of ritual assistant or deacon, often someone training for the priesthood.
You mentioned lineage earlier, needing 7 generations of Mandaean ancestors. That's strict. But how does someone actually become a priest? It's not just inherited, right?
No, it's definitely not inherited. It requires immense dedication and learning. Any Mandaean man who is knowledgeable, a Yalufa or scholar, and meets the lineage and purity requirements can potentially train. But the ordination process itself, especially to become a Tarmida, is famously demanding.
How demanding are we talking?
Our sources describe an initiation period that lasts, get this, over 68 days.
68 days? What on earth do they do for over 2 months?
It's an incredibly intense period of ritual purification and instruction. The core of it is a 60-day seclusion, a great vigil.
60 days in seclusion, where?
Usually in a special constructed ritual hut called a quinta, built near the Yardana, the flowing water. During this time, the candidate has to maintain absolute ritual purity. He prepares all his own food, avoids contact with the outside impure world, and focuses entirely on prayer and study. It's a complete separation from Tibble to achieve a state of heightened purity.
Wow, total isolation. What about the prayers? Is there specific learning involved?
Oh, immensely so. During that seclusion, the novice has to master and correctly recite something like 180 specific complex ritual prayers from the liturgical texts, and they're carefully divided.
Divided how?
According to the Mandaean understanding of the person, 60 prayers are for purifying the Nijimta, the pure soul or intellect. 60 are for the Ruha, the animating spirit or breath, which is seen as more connected to emotions and susceptible to air. And 60 are for the Pagra, the physical body itself.
So they're purifying mind, spirit, and body through this intensive liturgical work.
Exactly. The whole person has to be brought into a state of alignment and purity to be worthy of officiating the rituals and channeling the divine power of the light. It's an extraordinary undertaking.
And this emphasis on purity is reflected in how the priests look, their vestments.
Very much so. It's all symbolic. Priests wear only white robes, the rasta, signifying the purity and light of the uthri from the world of light. They use a pandama, which is a veil covering the mouth.
Why
to prevent their own breath, considered potentially impure, from contaminating the sacred elements, especially the prayers being uttered or the miyahai during rituals. They also carry a staff, the margna, usually made of olive wood, symbolizing their authority and connection to life. The ideal image is modeled on Shishlam, considered the prototypical Mandaean priest figure.
Okay, this brings up a really interesting point, maybe a tension. The priesthood sounds entirely male, based on what you've described. But what about gender roles more broadly in Mandaeism?
It's a definite paradox. On the one hand, the core teachings seem to emphasize spiritual equality and complementarity between men and women. There's no inherent theological reason for women to be seen as less capable of achieving Mandeo or purity.
And you mentioned something unusual about naming.
Yes, that's fascinating. Mandaeans traditionally use a matrilineal naming system. People are often identified as son of mother's name or daughter of mother's name. That's highly unusual in the largely patriarchal Middle East and suggests a deep-rooted respect for the female line.
So if the theology supports equality and there's this matrilineal aspect, why has the priesthood become exclusively male, at least in modern times?
The consensus from the sources is that this is largely a result of cultural influence from surrounding societies, particularly solidifying sometime in the late 19th or early 20th century. It wasn't always the case.
There's evidence of female priests?
Yes, historical records and textual references, like the mention of a woman named Shlama Beth Kidra, confirm that female priests or priestesses did exist and officiate in the past. The religion itself doesn't seem to forbid women from teaching or even baptizing.
So it's a cultural barrier rather than a doctrinal one?
It appears so. Currently, women cannot be ordained to perform as Buddha. However, female elders, especially the wives of priests, hold positions of great respect. They're often key teachers of the faith, the scriptures, and the traditions within the community.
Is there any discussion about changing this, especially with the community facing challenges?
There is ongoing discussion, particularly in the diaspora. With a shortage of priests and the need to preserve the faith in new contexts, some are questioning whether revisiting the historical precedent for female spiritual leadership might be necessary for survival. It's a live issue.
Survival, that word feels very relevant now. We've talked about a faith that has weathered 2 millennia in Mesopotamia, but the current situation sounds incredibly precarious.
It is. It's an existential crisis, frankly. But before we dive into the 21st century, it's worth remembering they've faced near collapse before.
Really? When was that?
In the 19th century, there was a devastating period where a combination of cholera epidemics and intense local persecution, especially in the Iranian city of Shishtar, wiped out almost the entire ordained priesthood.
The whole priesthood. How did they recover from that? That sounds like game over for a ritual-heavy faith.
It was incredibly close. The tradition was literally saved by 2 young acolytes, basically trainees. Their names were Yahya Biram and Ram Zirin. Because they had meticulously learned and memorized the rites, they were able to reconstruct the priesthood and ensure the liturgical knowledge wasn't lost forever. It shows incredible resilience.
Wow. A recovery from the break. Which makes the scale of what's happened since 2003 in Iraq even more tragic. What are the numbers?
The numbers are staggering and just heartbreaking. Before the 2003 invasion, estimates put the Mandaean population in Iraq somewhere between 60,000 and 75,000 people.
Okay, a significant community.
A very significant ancient presence today. Estimates suggest maybe only 3,000 to 5,000 remain in Iraq.
Wait, from 75,000 down to 5,000, that's a 95% loss?
Yes, a catastrophic demographic collapse in their ancestral homeland. The vast majority were forced to flee.
Why were they targeted so severely in the chaos after 2003?
It was a confluence of factors that made them uniquely vulnerable. First, their religious pacifism. Mandaeans are traditionally forbidden from carrying weapons or engaging in violence. This left them completely defenseless when law and order broke down and militias rose to power.
Defenseless targets?
And often wealthy targets, too. Historically, Mandaeans were renowned goldsmiths, silversmiths, and jewelers in cities like Baghdad and Basra. This prosperity made them targets for kidnapping, extortion, robbery, and assassination by criminal gangs and extremist groups.
So, vulnerability due to pacifism and targeting due to perceived wealth. Was there religious persecution too?
Absolutely. With the breakdown of state protection and the rise of extremism, they lost the fragile security they had. Some radical clerics issued fatwas declaring them infidels or no longer protected people of the book. This led to forced conversions, sexual violence, destruction of their places of worship, mandis, and systematic efforts to drive them out. For most, fleeing was the only option.
A forced exodus. But beyond the violence, there's another threat, isn't there? Something tied directly back to their core ritual need.
Yes, and this is the insidious, slow-burning crisis that affects even those who escape the violence. It's the environmental threat to the Mia Hayyi.
The living water itself.
Exactly. The rivers that are central to their identity and practice, the Tigris, the Euphrates in Iraq, the Karun in Iran, are facing ecological disaster. We're talking severe pollution from industry and sewage, increased salinity, and drastically reduced flow due to upstream damming projects, particularly in Turkey, and the impacts of climate change.
So the water they need not just to live, but to practice their religion is literally disappearing or becoming unusable.
Precisely. You cannot perform Buddha in polluted water. It would be ritually contaminating, not purifying. This environmental crisis strikes at the very heart of their ability to be Mandaean in their homeland. It's a form of ethnocide by environmental destruction.
Which must be driving even more people into the diaspora. Where have they mainly gone?
The largest communities are now outside the Middle East. Sweden has a very significant population, as does Australia. There are also growing communities in the United States, Canada, Germany, the Netherlands, and elsewhere. The majority of Mandaeans now live scattered across the globe.
And this scattering, this diaspora, creates its own set of challenges for maintaining the faith, doesn't it?
Huge challenges. 3 stand out. First, the critical shortage of priests. There are estimated to be fewer than 50 ordained Mandaean priests worldwide to serve this dispersed global community, which might number up to 100,000 people now. That's an impossible ratio.
50 priests for 100,000 people scattered globally. How can they possibly maintain the rituals?
It's incredibly difficult. The second challenge is linguistic erosion. Classical Mandaic is the liturgical language, essential for the rituals and scriptures. But younger generations growing up in Stockholm or Sydney are native speakers of Swedish or English. Keeping the sacred language alive is a major struggle.
And the third challenge circles back to the water again, I assume.
Yes. How do you fulfill the absolute requirement for natural, flowing yardna in urban environments, far from suitable rivers? You can't just use the local city river if it's polluted, or a chlorinated swimming pool. The ritual requirements are very specific.
So, facing violence, environmental destruction, priest shortages, language loss, and the difficulty of finding ritual water. How does a tradition this ancient, this seemingly rigid, adapt without breaking its own rules?
This is where we see their resilience kicking in again, through careful innovation. Faced with the impossibility of finding suitable natural yardnas in many diaspora locations, the Mandaean religious authorities have debated and authorized a specific solution.
What's that?
The construction of special purpose-built ritual pools, often connected to their community centers or mandis. But these aren't just pools.
How are they different?
They are engineered to meet the halakhic or ritual requirements. They often incorporate systems that divert water from a natural source, or use advanced filtration and circulation systems to ensure the water remains living, flowing, and pure, according to Mandaean precepts. It's a way to maintain the essential condition of Hayyi when a natural river isn't viable.
So they're essentially building artificial yardness in exile.
That's a good way to think about it, yeah. It's a pragmatic adaptation born of necessity. There are authorized pools like this operating in places like Sweden and the Netherlands, and I believe one is planned or under construction near Detroit in the U.S.
And beyond the physical infrastructure, how does the community stay connected?
Community organizations are vital. Groups like the Mandaean Sabian Society in Sweden and similar associations in other countries play a crucial role. They coordinate religious life, organize language classes, provide social support, and use online networks to connect Mandaeans across the globe, trying to preserve that sense of shared identity and practice despite the dispersal.
So the struggle is really on multiple fronts, against violence, against environmental loss, and against cultural dissolution in the diaspora. They're fighting to keep the Manda alive when the physical world seems to be working against them.
And their ability to do that hinges on these adaptations, on training new priests against the odds, on keeping the language, and on finding ways like these ritual pools to maintain the connection to the living water that is the bedrock of their entire spiritual universe. It's a continuous effort to preserve that gnosis.
It really brings us full circle. We started with Mandaeism as this unique, ancient, Gnostic survival, viewing our world as this impure place created by Tahil, influenced by Ruha and her forces of fate.
And we've seen how their entire system, the Ginta Rabba, bound in duality, the constant purification of Buddha, the complex journey of the Masita, it's all geared towards escaping that impurity, navigating those Mayarta, and reaching the world of light, Moyunakusha, through acquiring Manda.
Their resilience is incredible, surviving that 19th century crisis only to face this massive upheaval in the 21st, losing 90% of their Iraqi population, and now facing the slow disappearance of the very rivers they depend on.
That clean, flowing water, the Hayyi, the manifestation of the divine on earth. It's becoming scarce, polluted, and their response, building these engineered yardness in Sweden or the US, it shows incredible adaptation.
But it leaves you with a really deep question, doesn't it? Not just for them, but maybe for all of us reflecting on our relationship with the environment and tradition.
What question is that for you?
Well, if the natural world, specifically that flowing river, is considered the direct physical manifestation of the divine, the pure source, what does it mean theologically when that source is degraded or gone and you have to rely on human technology to mimic it, to recreate it?
That's a profound point. How far can ritual adaptation go before it changes the nature of the ritual itself? For Mandaeans, preserving the form of living water is paramount. But does the reliance on technology to achieve that form subtly alter the connection to the original divine source they believe flows through nature?
Yeah, if the Almadura's presence on Earth is fading because the rivers are dying, what does that imply about the state of our world, Tibble? Does it make the Gnostic message of escape even more urgent? It's a stark challenge for a faith so deeply intertwined with the purity of water, facing a future where that purity is increasingly hard to find.
It really is. It forces contemplation on the relationship between spirit and matter, ritual and environment, especially when the physical anchor for that ritual is under such profound threat. A very sobering thought to end on.
Thanks for tuning into Sonara's Deep Dive. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any of our future episodes. I bring you fresh content every week. Thanks for listening.